am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. This valuable time is for you to pause in your day and go on your own self-journey. Discover the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life at work and at home. Learn from the guests on this show as they share their inspirational stories on how they found ways to break internal beliefs that were no longer serving them. Because if you believe you can, you will. And our podcast begins now. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Jennifer Wilson of Convergence Coaching. She is co-founder and partner of this national consulting firm that helps leaders achieve success. She has been named one of Accounting Today's 100 most influential people in accounting, Inside Public Accounting's top 10 most recommended consultants, and Practicing CPA's top 25 thought leaders and top 25 most powerful women in accounting. She is an experienced change agent who has worked in both public accounting and industry and a frequent speaker and thought leader on topics related to leadership, the rise of the next generation, and managing change within the CPA profession. As you will see from our discussion, she is also a wife, mother, writer, and runner. What we talk about during this discussion is her journey coming from cold calling selling PCs to leading a top consulting firm. She shares the lessons she has learned from her parents, her peers, her team members, and her children that have helped her design the career and life she has today. Well, today, Jennifer and I are in Hawaii, and I'm very excited to have Jennifer Wilson from Convergence Coaching on our podcast. So, Jennifer, I'd love to start out with just you giving us a little bit of background of how you got to where you are with Convergence Coaching. Like, what's your story?
Okay. So, I guess I'm not, it's weird to start with, like, I was born in a nightmare. Oh my gosh, that's all I meant. So I started off in technology.
Okay.
And I fell into it. I took a part-time job in college, telemarketing for an accounting software distributor.
Okay.
Just as the IBM PC was released.
Okay.
So I got this kind of cool job that didn't exist before I took it, calling into accounting firms and back then computer retailers, which were the VARs of the later VARs. And I'd call in and find out if they were using PCs and if they were going to automate accounting, and I'd try to convince them to do that and then to use us for distribution.
Wow, so you liked telemarketing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, I was raised by a mother who taught me to.
Was telemarketing, and I couldn't pick up the phone one more time. So what do you think? Like, how did that become interesting to you? Was it like cold calling people? Were there people you knew? Or?
Well, I mean, I bought the yellow pages from 7 states.
Wow.
Okay, so like physical hard copy books, and called everybody in the accounting section of the yellow pages and everybody in the computer retailer section.
Wow.
So definitely cold call. But Randy Johnston.
Mm-hmm.
So he was with Entree Computer.
Oh, okay.
And I met him off a cold call when I was 19.
How funny.
Because I bought Kansas yellow pages. So I called Randy randomly, and our friendship started then, a long time ago. So I met tons of people, and I didn't look at it like cold calling and the fact that I was trying to sell people stuff. I was just calling to find out, hey, what are you doing with automation? Are you going to go to the PC when people were fighting it and resisting it? So when I met somebody who was, then we were like friends. We were part of a tribe. And so it was more like I was trolling for friends than I was trying to sell somebody something.
That's a great perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I made a lot of friends.
Yeah.
And that way,
So how did you start a conversation?
I don't know. This is Jennifer Wilson, and I am working with accounting software on a PC, and I know you're in accounting, and I wondered, are you guys doing anything with PC-based accounting software?
I was trained completely different. I was trained to pretend that we had already had a conversation. They told me to call back. So I start we talked a week ago, and you told me to give you a call back. Oh, it was painful.
That's outside my authenticity.
Yeah, exactly. It did not fit with me either.
No, that's not who I am, not even a little bit. So no, and I was taught to telemarket by my mother. I
Okay.
helped her sell zoo memberships for the Omaha Zoo.
Oh, really?
So she paid me 10 cents a call when
Yeah.
I was 11. So I'm pretty unafraid to call people.
Right. So that kind of started you on that path of sales.
Yeah.
That you felt comfortable just entering into anyone's life and suggesting something.
Yeah. And influencing others and trying to drive a very dramatic change because everybody was paper-based.
Right.
And I was trying to get them to see that they could automate accounting and they could use this super cool tool called VisiCalc,
Okay.
which was the predecessor to Excel.
Oh, okay.
And up to then they were adding on a green sheet of paper whole columns of numbers. And they prided themselves if they could look at them and visually add them and stuff. And I had to teach them how this PC was going to add them for them. And they thought that was going to make the whole world stupid. Everybody was going to be dumb, And anyway, it was super cool because I got inside CPA firm boardrooms as a kid.
Yeah.
I was 19 years old and I got in there.
What was your major?
Accounting with a minor in marketing.
Okay.
And but I was going to school at the time. I mean, I wasn't professionally doing anything other than a side hustle, making phone calls.
Yeah.
But it led to a career in accounting software distribution and went to work at Sage. And then after that, I retired and took a year off. I did 7 days a week for 7 years at Sage and really grew that thing and learned a ton. And then left and took a year off. And when my volunteer work and all that stuff started to consume me, my husband said, "Hey, you're never home. You're always on the phone. You're on the computer. Why don't you go get a real job?"
Right,
So
exactly.
I started a consulting firm and ultimately went to work at BDO. And then when I left BDO, I started Convergence almost 20 years ago.
Wow. That's quite a thing to have your own business that you create for 20 years.
It's super cool. And it's flown by. I mean, to say 20 years it's a concept, it's the truth, but it's not fathomable.
Right. So let's go back. So you mentioned your mom worked for the zoo.
Yeah. Well, no, she didn't work for the zoo. She was a volunteer.
Okay.
She was just selling zoo memberships as a volunteer.
Oh,
yeah, community service kind of thing.
And what did your dad do?
So that's not what my mom did, though.
Oh, okay.
My mom had her master's in guidance counseling.
Okay.
And she was a registered nurse, and she was a psychiatric nurse.
Okay.
And she sold insurance.
Yeah.
And during the time that I was automating accounting software people, she worked for me for minimum wage for 2 years.
Oh.
She helped me telemarket. She helped me build a channel.
Wow.
In the Midwest.
That's awesome.
Because she wanted to help launch me in this cool, new, completely new field called, computer.
Yeah.
And my dad, retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel.
Okay.
And he did 20 plus years as a firm administrator of a large law firm in Omaha.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Yep. So
he retired at 72. Wow. And they're both living. My dad, my mom will turn 90 in November, and my dad will be 90 next May.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're a half a mile from me and my best friend.
Oh, that's so nice. That's really nice. So how did they influence decisions you were making as a little girl?
Yeah.
Growing up, and you said you had 4 other siblings, or
I'm one of 6.
One of 6.
So I'm number 4. 3 girls, 3 boys.
Okay.
And I think my parents' biggest influence was that they had a conversation called "You Can Be Anything." And my mom was a feminist. She wasn't originally. She was a very conservative Baptist, but when Dad went to Vietnam, she sold the station wagon and got a Volkswagen bus. She went back to school and burned her bra and all that stuff. So from that angle, my super liberal mom, was like, "Hey, you can do anything. You can be anything." And so as a little kid, I really thought that was true until I found out that because I was born on an Air Force base in Germany that I couldn't be president. I was like, "Mom and Dad, what does that mean? I can't be president. Are you kidding me?" So I was super bitter. But I mean, they convinced me I could do anything. And so, I mean, I think that has to be that and my faith in God. Yeah. And which is a faith in a higher power that if I be unselfish and try to do good for others, that the world will treat me right. Yeah. That faith system that my parents gave me, those 2 things I think would probably be the biggest
Yeah.
beliefs that I got from them as a kid that made a difference in who I am today.
Yeah. So what led you to want to major in accounting and marketing when your parents were not really in those fields?
My brother Jack he passed his CPA exam on the first try and went on to pass the bar and became a partner at Touche Ross and then Deloitte. So I first started in college thinking I would be a doctor, but I really did not appreciate chemistry. I mean, I liked it in high school, but in college partying and chemistry, they just didn't go hand in hand. And I wanted to have more fun than that. So I switched to a business major and I just picked accounting because Jack did accounting. I didn't know what else to major in. And then marketing, mostly because of my mom's influence about selling, and you could sell anything to anybody as long as your intentions are good. And so that's kind of where I ended up.
We need to say that again. Say it one more time.
Okay, you can sell anything to anybody as long as your intentions are good.
Yeah.
And that's what I teach people all the time about selling when I'm trying to have them understand or influencing, getting your ideas across to others that they can't be for your reasons. They have to be for their reasons. And if they have a need that you can fulfill that and it's right for them, then selling that idea to them is not a bad thing. It's not manipulation. It's not evil.
Right.
It's actually a service. And it's almost unconscionable not to tell them you can help them with their problem.
Right.
But, selling things for your reasons, selfishly, because you need a deal or you need the, the engagement or the commission or your, hours are slow or whatever, then that is not the right approach, and it won't succeed ultimately. They'll come back at you.
Right. So you went into accounting. So you started having this part-time job. Did you work in a firm during college?
Well, so I actually had several jobs, and I've always been a worker. Like I had a paper route at age 8 and a credit card at 11.
Yeah, I did checkbooks.
Yeah, me too. I did too. Yeah. I wrote bad checks for gum and that kind of stuff at a grocery store and didn't even realize that, I thought I wrote a check. It was money. My parents had to say, hey, wait a minute, you have to have money in that account before you write these checks. So I was kind of industrious, and so I worked as this telemarketer at the accounting software distributor. I worked as a clerk typist in the medical records department.
Okay.
I also bartended.
Yeah.
Which is, must have.
Yeah.
You're going to be having maximum fun.
Yeah, and
college.
then you're going to get rid of chemistry.
Yeah, exactly. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Yes. Bartending. So I like chemistry. I need the bartender. So the accounting software thing just was this unknown territory. And nobody knew anything. And there was no manuals, no training, the tech support was free. So you would call the 1-800 number and be on hold for like 6 hours.
Right.
Nobody could help you with anything. So it was like a black box and I was interested.
Yeah.
So I took out, with my parents co-signing a loan and bought a compact, portable 86-pound laptop.
Yeah.
And loaded up the accounting software and started learning it. And when I would telemarket to sell, people would say, I'm trying to do it, but I've got an error 41 or whatever. And so I would call the tech support line and be on hold for 6 hours while I made my phone calls. Somebody would answer, and I made friends with all the guys up at Open Systems Accounting Software, some of whom I'm still friends with on Facebook, Doug and Bill and a whole bunch of others. And they would say, oh, it's Jennifer, and they'd help me and they'd give me a solution for these errors. And I'd write it all down and put it in this 3-ring binder.
Yeah.
And later Open Systems heard that I had the binder. And they said, come up here, kid, to Minneapolis. We want to see this binder.
Yeah.
And then they ended up incorporating it and we made it into a training manual and I traveled around the country training people.
Wow.
And all of a sudden I was in accounting software.
Okay.
And that was not a career choice. You couldn't pick it. And I like to tell my kids now when they're worrying about what am I going to be when I grow up, I say, all the jobs I've had weren't invented until I did them.
Exactly.
And I didn't invent them, but they were just being invented as I was doing them.
Well, and I think it takes awareness, like being open to what's happening around you and saying, I want to take advantage of that opportunity and what gets your blood boiling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for sure, what's interesting to you,
Yeah.
or what you feel passionate about, or whatever. And so, I mean, it was scary to tell my parents. I left school, I left college,
Yeah.
because I had an opportunity to move with my employer.
Right.
a distribution company, accounting software distribution to Southern California. And I'd always wanted to get out of Nebraska. And so I went. And I was like, hey, mom and dad, I'll go back. I'll go to Cal State Long Beach. I'll do a year of residency. It'll be cheap. It'll be fine. My parents were like, no, finish school, no moving. But then they helped me move. I moved. And then I was there a year, and Sage, state-of-the-art accounting software, called. And I took the call and went down and met with those guys, and I did a 7-year rocket ride after that. And I was their VP of Sales and Marketing and Customer Services. And
where'd you start at Sage? What was your job?
Director of Sales.
Okay.
And I was that for maybe 90 days, and then they made me VP of Sales. And then we just added all this stuff to my job. I was 24 when I took that job. And anyway, I did that, and I kept meaning to go back to school, but I didn't.
Right.
I was busy, like I said, 7 days a week for 7 straight years, and I learned so much. I made every HR mistake you could make. We had over organization of 25%. We had.
Right.
So I was constantly interviewing and training. But a lot of people have like high school friends that are their best friends, or college friends. Mine are all from state-of-the-art accounting software.
Right.
That's my posse of people.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of human beings that I met as a kid and hired and brought them in, and we all built this thing together. It was so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I never went back until I finished at state-of-the-art and moved home to Nebraska with my husband to get in the baby business. And after I had my daughter Della, she was a few months old, I suddenly felt really compelled to get my degree. But I'd made my money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I didn't need my degree for that. I needed it because I committed to my grandfather, and my parents really wanted me to have it. And it felt like unfinished business. Like, just one of those things on your list that's way up there.
Right.
You wrote it a long time ago, but you never scratched it off.
Yeah.
And so I went back and got my degree, and I went at night school, big and pregnant, because by then I'd started this company.
Right.
In fact, I interned for Convergence coaching.
Oh, interesting.
I was an intern. I wrote my first Accounting Today article as part of my internship for Convergence coaching. Not a joke. I got a grade for it.
Yeah.
And so I got my degree in 2002.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's funny. So my son was born in 2001, and I did my MBA on bed rest.
That's a good
just
time
to finish it. Like 2 weeks.
Knocked it out.
Till 2 weeks before he was born. I finished it. It was such a relief.
I was huge and pregnant and old.
Oh, yes.
Attending these classes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the teacher would wheel in a special chair for the big lady, and I'd sit in there with those kids and take a management class or something at night.
Yeah.
They wouldn't make me sit in this little desk with that big belly.
Oh, well, that's nice.
That was baby number 2, by the way.
Yeah.
So I was holding her at my graduation party.
Oh,
yeah,
very
it was nice.
So what shifted, because in order to make these pivots that you had to have, and you come from this belief system, I can do anything, were there any points that you felt like, no, I can't?
Oh yeah tons. I mean, sometimes it was, I can't work for an organization that I think is on the wrong path, or I can't work for an employer who the individual that I worked for was not treating people well or something, so sometimes the pivots were caused by my belief system not aligning with my employers or with my direct supervisors. I think that it was a huge wake-up call to find out that as a female, that I was going to be treated differently. Again, my parents didn't set me up for that.
Right.
I'm not kidding. So, I mean, the first time I noticed that, I was making less than the other guys, but I had the job that if we didn't make our numbers, I'd get fired.
Right.
I don't know. There were some moments there when I realized, wow, youth has its disadvantages, and being female is pretty sketchy sometimes too, as it relates to being treated equally or heard, or I mean, those were some moments of reckoning or whatever, where I had to, and you could be victim to it, or you could say, what could I do differently? How could I change what I'm doing? To be heard more effectively, or maybe I can't work in an organization that values these things, and maybe I should be out on my own.
Right. So were there times where you backed up from it and said, yeah, I need to change?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, that's how I founded Convergence.
Yeah.
And I tell people, occasionally people will say, you really should sell this thing and come to work for us, or,
Right.
and I tell people I'm utterly unemployable. I mean, I will never work for the man again. And if I do, something really bad has happened in my life.
Right.
And I guess I would if I had to
right.
Feed my family or something.
Right.
But I don't think I could ever get into that corporate infrastructure where things don't make sense.
Right.
And where decisions get made based on politics.
Right.
And I know that's naive. I'm watching our country's politics and I'm super duper grossed out.
Yeah.
I just believe that we can do better.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes you unique as a person as well, that you're very, like, it is what it is, right? Like, you're not trying to sugarcoat information. So, and I know a lot of times when, the approach is like that, and, I'm similar, people, don't take that well. So how do you reconcile with, like, I've got to do what's right for me at the end of the day to feel like I did well by others, versus I'm going to make people very unhappy by what I'm about to do.
Well, so I'm in that boat right now because there's so much change in our profession happening, and so much needs to transition to next gen practices and strategies, and the generous thing for firm leaders to do is to shift who they're being and be more open to the change that needs to happen and these tough conversations. And I'm unwilling to have, to say that I'm working with a firm and not have those conversations. And so, how do I reconcile it? I have to, first of all, say I'm not going to win homecoming queen.
Right.
I'm not trying to win it. I want to be liked, and I don't want people to think, oh gosh, I don't want to hear what she has to say. I'd love to be invited because everybody wants to hear everything.
Yeah.
But I'm more worried about our profession. I'm worried actually about our country and its transition of wealth, and whether we're going to do a good job, and whether we're going to set these young people up for the right circumstances so they can succeed, or whether we're going to essentially deplete these firms like we're depleting our Earth's resources. Are we going to just suck them all dry, or milk the cash cow all the way till there's no milk left and then hand it to these people and say, hey, figure out how to fix this mess I've made?
Yeah, but I'm good. I'm not.
I'm unwilling to participate in it.
Right.
And so I need to be able to, my dad told me this when I was a kid. He said, Jennifer, the worst lie you'll ever tell is the lie you tell yourself. And at the end of the day, you got to look in the mirror and stare at your own face and say, I did the right thing. Right. Whatever that is, right? And so I have to do that before I worry about staring in someone else's face and having them not approval at me.
Right.
And so far, I may be occasionally, out there a radical or even sometimes, super challenging of traditional norms. But so far, that strategy has continued to keep my company in business and continue to make a difference for the clients that we serve. And I have audience members say thank you. Right. But occasionally I have people avoid me. Yeah. We're doing this podcast and we just gave a speech, and there are certain people skirting the sides of the wall as opposed to coming up to me and saying thanks so much. Because I might have just said that they shouldn't continue some of the behaviors that they're doing that aren't good for their firm or its people or its clients.
And they don't want to face that.
Or they don't want to, they want to make me wrong. Or their circumstances and not take responsibility. Or they want to make the young people wrong. Right. Which is an absolute crash and burn strategy if you want to do that.
Well, and I think, one of the things I talk about a lot is knowing what your personal purpose is, because it's actually your guiding light in your career and personal life, right? And a lot of people don't take the time to identify it, to define it. And you've got a very clear personal purpose of what you do. You're not leading with your career. You're leading with, this is my purpose of what I do. If it makes some people unhappy, so be it. I wouldn't be living my purpose otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think my purpose is to transform individual performance and transform teams and transform firms inside the market we're living in and the one we're going to.
Right.
Not inside the market we wish we had.
Yeah.
Or that we used to have.
With. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? I mean, that's what I say. I say to people all the time, I wish that I could do business with you and help you in the market we wish we had.
Yeah.
Or the market that was yesterday's market.
Right. Right.
But we have to do business in the market we have.
Yeah.
And the one that's coming.
Yes.
And so as long as I'm working with people to figure that out for them,
right,
both individually, like for their career and their life's purpose, then I am doing what I think I was called to do. And when I'm working with a team and we're having that conversation, then I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Yeah. If we're not, and what I'm doing is like entertainment, right? You know, they're hiring me because they want me to be the entertainer for a half-day retreat. Yeah. That's not my life's purpose. Right. That's not transformative. Right. And so then I'm usually somehow outside of what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. So what do you take from your learnings and your belief systems to help younger generations or your staff or your coworkers? Like, are there some key things that you've seen that help others from the things you've learned over time? Yeah. Well, I mean, I think my number one would be take 100% responsibility for your circumstances, which is my favorite leadership distinction and probably the least favorite of all others. You know, they don't like it. Right. And that's this idea that I don't like my circumstances, or I don't like my outcomes, or I don't like my relationship or whatever. Right. And what I want to do is make other people wrong for it, or make the marketplace wrong, or make a whole generation wrong. Right. That's easy to do, blame, as opposed to say, wait a minute, I'm 100% responsible for my circumstances and I can change something. I can try something new. I can quit doing something. Right. I can alter my circumstances. I can discontinue this relationship. I can do a whole bunch of things to change my circumstances. Right. So I try to teach people to be 100% responsible. And so when they're complaining, I say, you know, I hear you, I feel you. How could you be responsible? And what could you change? Right. And when I get people there, and when they realize, wow, there's a lot of power in that. I'm not a victim. I do have the ability to change my circumstances. That's a huge breakthrough. So I try to give that one to everybody. And they don't like it because sometimes most of us just want to complain. Right. And I try to, you know, listen to that a little bit, but mostly and people on my team, you know, my team will be like, Jennifer, I hear you complaining. Yeah. How are you? As much as 100% responsible. So I eat my own dog food. And then this idea that like you could be anything. Yes. And that you can generate it, and that you can pray about it, and you can tell others and enroll others in your ideal, and they'll help you. Right. That would be another one, is this idea that you do not have to be limited by your current circumstances or your upbringing or your past-based story, if you choose not to be. And then the other thing is that, you know, I said this in the speech today, generosity is to me the number one hallmark of a functional person and of a functional team or company. Yeah. The degree of generosity or how much selfish interest is allowed to persist without discussing it. Yeah. Because we all have selfish interest. Right. What do you want out of this? What do I want out of it? If we talk about it and then if we're open, then we try to help each other get each other's selfish interest met. Right. Like, tell me what you need and I'll tell you what I need. Yeah. And how could we work together to get it? Yeah. That's a high functioning environment. Right. And that's, that's authentic too. Right. And so that's another thing I would tell young people. And that's another thing we try to strive for, is like, get your selfish interest out on the table and try to help other people with theirs. Right. And like that selling thing I said earlier. Yeah. You know, if you're selling for their reasons, you're going to be successful. If it's going to make a difference for them and help them. Right. Otherwise, you're doing it selfishly and it's not going to work. Right. So those would be some of the beliefs that I have and hold that I try to pass on. Anything that you've seen, like you've had to shift as a leader yourself, so where over time you've noticed like this isn't working? Oh my God. Well, I've got 100 things I have to shift daily. Yeah, yeah. You know what I mean? Don't you? Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm a dominator. Yeah. And I'm an overdoer.
Right.
So, like
Overowner of
I
the
am
day.
an overdoer. So like if we have a hard problem, I'll do it. I'll fix it.
Right, yeah.
Something can't get done, give it to me. I'll do it.
Right.
That is an enabling strategy. It allows others not to own.
Right.
But it also robs them of the privilege of owning.
Right.
It's
learning.
It's a hoarding
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
And so I've had to learn to be like, who wants to own it? I don't need to own it. I won't own it.
Yeah.
And then on control, control is a little bit of when you own it, you can control it.
Right.
So when you give up ownership, you have to give up control and then trust that it'll turn out okay.
Yes.
And, my experience in doing that, and I've done it with my kids. I have 3 kids that are almost grown, and with all of my team members, anybody I've ever managed, when I've sort of really let go to them and trusted them, I've been so astounded by how awesome what they produce is.
Yes.
And maybe so much better than I could have done.
Right.
So much smarter and
right.
just a different angle. And I can't even say all the ways that it's better.
Yeah.
And there's so much gratification in seeing what they produce versus what I produce.
Yeah.
So it's this like, if I do it all, I can keep it small.
Right.
But if I give it all away, look at what could happen.
Yeah.
Which is the whole, creation that we've done with Convergence.
Right.
It's this big thing that's really small.
Yeah.
And it's because of the brilliance of the people that are working inside that group.
Yeah.
Not because of me. Might look like me sometimes, but it's not me.
It's a team effort.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. So some rapid fire questions that I end with.
Okay.
You get to pick a category. Family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Oh man. Family and friends.
Okay. So things or actions that I don't have that I want with my family and friends.
More time with them. I travel.
Yeah.
So more physical
like
time.
Human connection.
Yeah. Well, no,
time.
just physical time. Like laying around in my bed with my girls watching movies. That kind of stuff. Oh, we do some of it, but I'd love more.
Yeah. Okay. Things or actions I do have that I want with my family and friends.
Laughter and fun, real intentional fun. We try to schedule fun when I am home. So we've been axe throwing and escape rooming and zip lining and
what's escape rooming?
Escape room.
Escape room.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I thought it was a broom. I was like,
We're sweeping for fun. And there's a vacuum one too. So no, just more of the fun that we have, and also just figuring out ways to help each other.
Yeah. Okay. Things or actions I don't have that I don't want with my family.
Inauthenticity.
Mm-hmm.
My kids coach me and always have. I've told them, like my oldest daughter, I'd say, you're my starter child and I don't know what I'm doing.
Yes.
I'm going to screw it up terribly and you have 100% permission to coach me. So she would say, like, what are we going to learn from this? She still, to this day, she calls me Jen right now. We're in the Jen phase. She'll say, listen, Jen, I have some feedback. And it's mostly about how I'm managing my 15-year-old. My oldest has opinions about some things I need to shift. Yeah. Phone management and some things like that.
Right.
I don't want to ever shift away from that authenticity and that, the honesty that we have between us, that I'm not the boss and I don't know everything and I need their support and help to be a better person and a better leader, a better parent. And that I get the privilege of giving them the same feedback because I'm open to theirs.
Yes, exactly.
And the same with my husband.
Yeah.
Just the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good one. All right, and then last one. Things or actions that I do have that I don't want with my family and friends.
Distance.
Yeah.
Absence. I don't know. Because of distance and absence, sometimes having to talk about tough stuff without a ton of relatedness.
Yes.
I haven't seen you in a while, but now we're going to have to get right into why is your American Express bill so Seriously though.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be performance managing my college kids when I haven't had the time to talk to them and relate to them.
Right.
So occasionally that stuff creeps in and I'd love to get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. So this has been great. Is there anything you want to make sure that you get across or that you share with the listeners before we close up today?
Just that, I'm super committed and my team is super committed to drive change in our CPA profession, the accounting profession, and the world as a result of that.
Yeah.
And so I would love input from all generations that have opinions about what messages I should be bringing forward. What things do they see that I don't see that we need to make sure to say to firm leaders and to individual next gen leaders? People have good ideas out there, and when they give them to me, I will run with them. So I think that would be it, just communicating them to me in email or in social media or whatever.
Right.
I'd love to hear from people about those kinds of ideas.
Okay, great. And all of Jen's contact information will be in the notes for the show. So it was great to be able to be here with you in Hawaii and be able to do this interview in person. And thanks for all of your great advice and stories that you shared.
Well, thanks for asking. I'm really, really glad to be asked.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my discussion with Jennifer, where we really discussed everything from her career to her family and all the people she's met along the way, where she's learned different lessons that have helped her throughout her career. And I want to take our mindful moments today to highlight some of the areas that really stood out for me. And one of them was about her saying, I need to be 100% responsible for my circumstances. And I think that's important, whether we're a leader, whether we are working for somebody, or it's one of our peers, that when we get frustrated during our day or different interactions happen that we're uncomfortable with or frustrated with, really understanding what was our responsibility in that interaction and actually taking a moment to pause and think about how could I do that differently the next time so that I understand my place in this. The other thing that she talked about was her parents and her parents saying to her that you can be anything, and the power of basically a mantra that she lived to, that she would take on opportunities because she believed she could be anything. And I think we need to remember how important it is to have those positive things that we are saying, whether it's people in our family or people we work with, that understanding the impact of our words is so important in motivating others. And when her father said to her, the worst lie you will ever tell will be the one that you tell yourself. And at the end of the day, you have to look in the mirror and be okay with who you are. We can go and think that we're getting over in our day, or there's certain political things that we're trying to work through in an organization. But at the end of the day, we have to be okay with ourselves. And when we don't show up authentically, or we tell ourselves the lie that it was totally somebody else's fault for a situation and so forth, we actually impede progress for ourselves and for the people around us. So I think this lesson is very important, is not only can you be anything, but how can you be authentic as you go about your career and your personal life, which I think Jennifer is just a great example of that. Another leadership goal that she talked about was generosity. And I think we talk about a lot of things with leadership where you need to understand different ways to motivate your people and so forth. But there's nothing stronger than being generous, and that it should be stronger than your own personal interests if you are going to be a people manager, because at the end of the day, we are responsible for the careers of others. And when we shift into leadership positions, it's important to shift the way that we think so that we think in the way of being generous. So even questioning that in our week, have we been generous this week? Is there anything we've done to be generous with our time, generous with our emotions, generous of just what somebody else needed? That can we answer those questions and know that we were there for others? Now, I know that a lot of people struggle with sales, and I think when we flip the area of sales and understand that it goes back to the same premise that it's not just about your people that you are being generous to, but also the people you sell to. And as long as your intentions are good, that it's not selfish to sell. And I think a lot of times it's hard for us to innovate and change and be creative, because what that means is we're going to have to sell a new service, a new product, something else. And in order to do that, we need to understand the pain points we are solving, not just the product or service that we want to put out there, but what is the actual pain point that we are solving that will help someone else? It can't just be for the money. It can't just be for the business. How are we helping globally, the world, the employees, the customers, ourselves, all those people connected, to understand that what we are doing is for a bigger purpose. And when we understand that bigger purpose, sales doesn't feel selfish. It actually aligns with our values. And Jennifer talked about that it's really important to designate what your values are, what is your bigger purpose, so that with whatever you do, whether it's your personal career, whether it's selling, whether it's how you interact with your family, that you are making sure that you align back to those values, that you show up authentic, that you're generous as a leader, and you remember that you can do and be anything. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more, so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.